Thank you so much for joining us again here today. We'll be covering a very important topic that I believe affects most of us, if not all of us, the topic of black tax. It came to my attention, I believe, a few days ago. I was scrolling on Twitter and someone was talking something about black tax, and then someone actually quoted the tweet in defense of black tax, that you are responsible for your family. You know, that's your family, you should take care of them. And that's when I took keen interest in the discussion of black tax. So the topic that we have today is Dear Diary, Black Tax Sucks. So when I saw that, I questioned, does it really suck? Or are there other people who think, you know, this is actually a good way of giving back to your family who has raised you? You are the first professional, you're the first educated person. This is your time to now elevate them. So maybe it doesn't suck. And that's the premise of what we'll be doing here today. We have two very great speakers who will be, I'm trying to find a middle ground word for this, because it won't be a fight, but it also won't be like a discussion. It's a debate. Let's just call it a debate. We have two exciting speakers who will be debating on this topic today. And without much ado, I will introduce our speakers. The first one, she comes from East London. She is a journalist. She is also a part-time model. I will call upon at this time, please, let's give her a round of applause as she comes up. Her name is Nkosazana. Yes, please take a seat. She's a model. So Nkosazana will be debating on the side for black tax. She's saying that black tax is okay, black tax is good, black tax is acceptable. And our next speaker, who will be arguing against black tax, saying black tax sucks and it's a burden on the working professional. He hails from KwaZulu-Natal, currently working here. He's very experienced in black tax. He said I should mention that. Let's please welcome and give a round of applause for Tami Zulu. I'll take a seat here. Okay, so these are our two guests for today. I'm very excited to have you here, and thank you for agreeing to be part of this discussion. I'll just ask for the technicians at the back to make sure that the mics are functioning right here next to me. Yes, okay. So before we can start about this topic, I think it's only fair for us to make sure that we set off on the same page. So the question is, what is black tax? A lot of us may have different opinions or different definitions of what black tax is, but the definition that I want us to use is the one that I will give, and then you can base your arguments based off of the definition that I will give. And the definition that I've chosen to use for this discussion according to the Urban Dictionary, which says that black tax is the extra money that black professionals are expected to give every month to support their less fortunate families and extended families. So that is the definition, the working definition that we'll be using for black tax. I should add further that these are not our only speakers. You are more than welcome to be part of the discussion. We have mics on this side, mics on that side. Anytime you feel like you have a question or a comment, please feel free to walk up to the mic, and we'll give you the time to speak or raise your question. At this time, we will start our discussion, and I will give to our two participants here to give their opening statements on black tax. We'll start this side with Nkosazana.
Hi, everyone. So, first of all, I just want to say I don't have a lot of experience in debating, so if I get chowed, forgive me, everyone. But I think for me, I'm coming from a very new. So my final year was in 2017. I'm a baby, Not a model, number one. But I started working last year in January, and it started off as an internship, and then I became a permanent person. But I think I've been paying black tax since I was a student, even, you know? Because there are in my family, like cousins and all of that, who are like, you know, my kid doesn't have shoes or whatever. And then I, you know, from my allowance, I'm like, okay, I'm the only person, one of the only few like peers, people my age in my family who actually chose to go to university. And I don't know, when people in my family look at me like, okay, no, she's in varsity, you know, according to them, I'm the girl, you know? And it's sometimes, like, it's not the case, like, I'm not the girl. But it's a thing of, yeah, but she's there and we can help her. And I think, for me, the reason why I always help where I can is because of exactly what the definition said, that it's those who are less fortunate. There are people in my family who take chances, and I don't play like that. But the people who don't have any other option in my family, I choose to help. And I don't think I'll ever stop doing that. So yeah.
Great, thank you for that. Tammy.
Good evening. Okay, as a disclaimer, whatever comes out of my mouth is not a reflection of what's in my heart. Okay, can you get that out of the way? If you are a working black professional, you know that there's no such thing as extra money. There's no such thing as extra money. Maybe on your first month or second month, that's like the least. Going forward, it's just a perpetual state of getting indebted and trying to survive the fourth and the third week before month end. And also, creating an expectation that is unsustainable can be a downfall, which can trap a lot of us into having the same expectation for our kids as well. So it's usually good to try and manage what you have and try and build a plan and a future for yourself for what you have, and allow your family to understand that you are an independent human being with plans. Doesn't really divorce them from getting involved, but any involvement should be on your plan as opposed to you just financing their dreams. One of the first things I was told when I moved into Johannesburg was that no one will ever finance your dreams. It was in a different business context, but we are always told that you can get an investor that can put money on your business and you flourish. Government expectation, many things that we expect. But one old man told me that, you know, to be frank with you, no one cares about you. And no one will finance your dreams. You must find your way on working hard. And also, in closing, it's good to learn that for every action, there's an implication for that action. Some of the people that depend on some of you black professionals today got themselves into that situation by not doing the right or making the right decisions. And we can't rob them of learning from that. So part of depriving them support is to actually help them learn or make them an object lesson for future kids, that Umalumu Banbani is where he is today. Because of
those are opening statements. I'm very excited to move on with this debate. So we heard from this side, Nkosazana. She's saying that it is her obligation to help, as the definition says, those who are less fortunate, especially in her family, and especially if she's in a position to help those people. And Tammy here has just mentioned that there's no such thing as extra money. Some of the cases of the families and family members that we are trying to help is because of bad decisions that they made, and they should be given the opportunity to learn from those lessons without interfering with what God has planned in their lives, right? So to create an atmosphere in this space, I would like, if you agree with Nkosazana, I would like you to sit on this side, please, just to create an atmosphere in this place. And if you're going with what Tammy is saying, let us please be on this side. Oh, and those who are in the middle.
Amen.
Wow. Okay, so this is how it's going to happen. So this will be a guided debate. So there are certain topics that we'll be actually covering. The first one is that of colonialism. How do we handle black tax in the context of our colonial history? Secondly, how do we handle black tax when we put it in contrast to tithing in church? And thirdly, how do we reconcile black tax and the creation of dependency to the people that we are trying to help and empower, hopefully. So those are the three main themes that we'll be covering for our debate today. So we'll start off again. Can you just give us your views, please? I'll start with Tammy this side on how colonialism or colonial history has a factor on black tax. Like, is black tax justifiable due to the colonial history that put our families at an economic disadvantage?
Okay, when it comes to colonialism, there are accomplices and victims. I'm talking about black people. I haven't started talking to the white oppressors. There are accomplices and there are victims. By accomplice, this is what I mean. If we today, in our generation, our information age, superior, educated and everything, allow foreign companies to come under the guise of investment to take ownership of what our future kids should benefit from. We are accomplices, right? So when they suffer 20 years from today or 50 years from today, it will be our responsibility or will be the reason why they suffer. Do you understand? Now, someone was making an example about how they gave spoons to our forefathers and took cows. It looks like a joke today, right? But imagine you being the only one in your clan who owns a mirror. The implications to that. I mean, land was in abundance, livestock was in abundance, no one foresaw anything that would make us suffer 200 years later. But a spoon was a rare commodity. If Ubaba Dlamini has a spoon, imagine the implications to the ladies, the fame and everything. So it was a luxurious item that was rare. But in the unintended consequences that those decisions had an unintended consequence to us in the future. So that is the accomplice. The victim are those that were not part of any decision making. They were just following the leaders and are now suffering the same consequences as us. So looking at black tax in that context then brings it to us. What implications does giving money, just plainly giving money to your parents, have in the future? Your future and the future of your kids. Do you understand? So maybe we could be accomplice for a perpetual cycle of poverty by filling this black hole that our kids will be expected to fill and our kids' kids will be expected to fill. Maybe some of them won't even make it. In a different way of thinking, maybe we should start thinking outside the box about, because we can't be penalized by the past we were not part of and say, but we couldn't work because black people were not allowed to, when Petrus Mutsepe and them are doing well, but they also grew up in the same generation. But anyway, I'm just saying there are many ways of looking at it as opposed to just a blanket suffering of black people.
So what I'm getting from what Tammy's saying here is that he's saying we are in a deficit definitely, either by being accomplices or by being victims. But by trying to cover that deficit, we are putting ourselves in a deficit, which is something that will keep spiraling down and never really reach an end. And he's saying that maybe it's time we take a different look, think outside the box, and forget about the past and start planning towards the future. Did I state that correctly? Okay, would you like to respond to that?
Well, I don't know if it's a response, but my take on it is it's very I don't know. I think that it's very easy to look at our reality as black people as a thing of, everyone has the same 24 hours. And yes, we're coming from a past Indiana, but we all have the same 24 hours and all of that. But I think when we look at reality, like today, if, for instance, my mom is not working, and that's a reality, whether whatever role she played in apartheid or whatever past we had, the reality right now is that she's not working, and if I do not send practically every month money at home, then she does not eat. And that's a reality for many people, is that if you don't send money home, akuzokiwa, and that's it. We can talk about a lot of things, but that's the reality. And I also think that when it comes to people, for instance, when I was talking about my cousins, people our age who didn't really experience apartheid, and we all had the same opportunities and all of that, it also depends on how the financial status in that small family, or big family, yes, but this sector of the family, where they're able to send their kids to good schools. And good education is not free, and most of the time, university is not an option for other people. And even people who work sometimes, they can't make ends meet. So they do try, and they get money, and they do this whatever, but it's not enough. And if you can help, which leads me back to my point, is that if you can help, I don't think we should have excuses. And I think that's, when I look at it, I think that's what God meant when he said, Ndobana, when we call ourselves Christians, we want to be Christ-like. And when we look at Elijah Christ when he was on earth, and even Gogo, it's always about helping. And I don't think he had excuses and a lot of English and theory. It was just helping. So, yeah.
Yeah, just a reminder to our audience, feel free at any time to stand to one of the mics if you have a question for any of them or both of them, or if you want to voice an opinion that you have, you can write it down as well if you would like. I believe, yes, there's a mic right over there by Sir Potence. I believe it's available also for those viewing on live stream, for them to send in questions, and they will be, they can text in the questions or comments, and we'll receive that from the team at the back. You had a response for what she said.
One of the psychological blackmail that we use against ourselves is to think that as soon as we drop dead, life stops. Human beings are very interesting creatures, and they know how to survive. You move from being a billionaire who lives a luxurious life to live in solitary confinement in a cell as arrested, and you live for 36 years, without all those benefits. So it's not just to think that if I don't take a particular decision, those people won't survive. They do find ways of. Some of us have been victims of breadwinners getting removed from the head, and we found ways of surviving, and we are here to tell the story. But my question is, does it only have to be money that is contributed to them? I mean, we are educated, we can give good advice, educated advice to them. We can pray for them. That's good. I ask them to have more faith in the Lord, It doesn't really have to be financially. One of the things that I've learned over time is that the money that you didn't work for, it becomes difficult to be responsible in spending it. And some of you who are financing black tax, no, you're always grumpy because you gave them a particular amount of money and they misspent it, not as much as you would want them to. And halfway down the month, they're asking for more. And you said, but I gave you, and So we have to be balanced when you are looking at it. Maybe it's not only, maybe encouraging them to start also looking at diversifying to survive could be a good option as opposed to just giving them money.
I have a question. So, for instance, I'm not sending physical money. I'm not sending an e-wallet or depositing into an account. But say I'm going to be like, okay, I'm going to invest in someone's education at home. Ne? Take someone to school maybe or whatever. Is that not black tax still? So even if you're investing, or maybe you're like, no, I'm going to open an account, or I don't know, for clothing or whatever, or I'm going to help you start some sort of sell chips or whatever it is, it's still black tax because you are somewhat financing it. So the definition changes now. Like I think it's the same thing because
There's NSFAS.
Okay, I believe we have mic one. We have someone, a question or comment.
Yeah, Tshepo. So I'm thinking of our departure point, maybe looking at the context within which we find ourselves in. You alluded to it earlier, to say if our departure point is the fact that we are Christians, there is that perspective that we are obligated to, take care of the less privileged, so we can move from that perspective. But also the same Bible, Paul mentions it about 2 or 3 times where I've read, where, if I would summarize or maybe say it in my own words, where he says, lo ngasebenzi makangadli, or who doesn't work must not eat, essentially, And he goes on to say he works, some parts of the day, and he does the Lord's work in some parts of the day. So I think, the point that we are alluding to now is that perhaps, throwing money at people might not necessarily be the solution. However, I think up until we are able to liberate the people, perhaps, that's what we may have to do, but maybe try to do it wisely. There's this common expression that says, rather give a person a fishing rod rather than giving them, fish. So maybe there could be another perspective or principle that we can use to try and help, our families. And just last one that says, other, call them races, right? Some of us sitting here, we are in positions of influence in corporates or in businesses. Someone says that, other races, if you're given an opportunity to employ someone, as a black person, this is a generic statement. As a black person, you look at competencies, before you hire. They made mention of another race that say, those races, if one of them is employed and they need to employ other people, you'll see that they'll employ people of their race. Even if, and then competency becomes a second category to say, as long as this person is from my family, I'll give them an opportunity, but I'll also dedicate time, to upskill them so that they are competent at the end of the day. So perhaps maybe there's an approach, we can use, but I still believe we are obligated to liberate our families.
Okay, we'll give the other hand there, the mic. That's so quiet here, the majority of the room. But yes, let's give the mic.
Tommy said something earlier that sometimes people need to learn. It's an opportunity for them to learn. But if we look at the history and the background of where we come from, the struggles that your parents went through, they went through them so that you don't have to struggle the same way. The same way that when you have been liberated and educated, it gives you the responsibility to ensure that those who are coming after you do not have to face the same challenges that you faced. That is not to say that they shouldn't learn, no. But the fact that you're educated and you've been exposed to all these things suggests that you have a better way of empowering those coming after you. So even if you had to say that you have a cousin or a young brother who's not doing anything, your responsibility is not just to throw money. The fact that you've had some knowledge, some form of education, you interrogate the person, not conversation-wise, but to find out how best you can help them without giving them just fish every time. So I think that's one way to look at it.
Well, thank you for that. I think we can move on to our next. Okay, we have a mic at the back. Let's just take that last hand before we move on to the next segment.
I'll read one question from the online community. It says, where does the Ubuntu fit in the debate? Where does Ubuntu fit in the debate?
Okay, so we have, which is, I think, a concept that is unique to us Africans, the concept of Ubuntu. How do we navigate that in the context of black tax?
I don't know. Okay, I think just having compassion for someone's situation and empathy, I think that's what Ubuntu is about, more than being a fool, basically, who every time people ask for money, you give them. But just putting yourself in that person's shoes and be like, okay, this is what this person is going through, and this is the type of help that I would have appreciated. For instance, when it comes to balancing Ubuntu and not being taken for a Popeye, my brother, he was a chef and all of that, and then because of his own bad behavior and all of that, he stopped working and he went back home, and so he's been looking for work and all of that. And this one time he asked me for airtime simply because he wants to make calls and yabona prepare for interviews and all of that. And then I sent him airtime. And what really annoyed me is that he didn't send a text to say thank you. And he keeps changing his phone numbers and all of that, but he did find a way to ask me for airtime. Once I send it to him, he does not say thank you. 2 weeks later, he asked me for money to go to take a taxi or whatever to go to that interview. And I didn't give him. Why? Because he didn't say thank you. So Ubuntu does not mean you being, like you're going to end up being a Popeye. So there is somewhat, a balance, but you need to put yourself in people's shoes, basically, and have compassion.
Yeah, yes, sure.
No, I always wanted. So my view is that, I don't know, there's this obsession. Throwing money somewhat is a bit of laziness in my part, I think. You can really develop people without giving them money. I still stand on that point, You can do a lot of improvement even back home without giving them cash. The reason why I'm saying this, good people, is that we don't have this money. We are suffering as black professionals against our white peers at work. They get paid 6 times as much in the same position. They don't have black tax and all these things. And we are expected to finance a fleet of people. So maybe as a parting point, it's not Ubuntu to me to have someone ask what I don't have. And some people even emotionally blackmail you. All right, they don't understand that. It's just simply not there. Maybe as a parting point, we need to understand that we don't have this money. We don't have it. We are willing to help. We are willing to assist anywhere possible, but not with money. That's my problem. And you can create a lot of enemies by creating that habit of giving money to some people. Some of us who come from a family where you grew up with 28 people, you give this one money and you don't give the other one, and then you are creating an unnecessary enemy. And if you treat them equally as your brother and deprive them, all of them with... then objectively, on a case by case, you can engage them and try and help, Doesn't have to be money.
Okay, we'll move on for now, and we're open to take more questions. I just want us to get into the next part, but please hold your questions. Feel free to voice them out in comments anytime. So when it comes to tithe, I've heard this argument a lot from people who say that they will not pay tithe while their families are starving, while their parents are not working, especially in light of the perception that the church structure as it is inefficient in the way it uses its funds, especially when you look at the state of a lot of churches here locally. There is, you would argue, very little return in terms of the investment that the church members are making in terms of returning tithe. So you look at the state of the churches, most of the churches locally go to church in schools, they don't actually have buildings. So there's that factor, and the factor that, I mean, parents are not working, things are difficult at home, and yet time and time again you are required to take out these hefty amounts to pay tithe, and then there's black tax as well. So how do you see the interaction between those two factors?
Ish. For me, I'm not going to say much on this, but my stance on this is that I don't really like negotiating with God and get tithe. I return tithe. You know, I don't even give myself the opportunity of having it. It comes in, it goes, and it has worked for me because I am still able to send money to my mother so that she can buy food and all of that. I haven't gotten to a point where I'm like, ish, you know. Personally, I just don't like negotiating with God about the tithe.
I guess my follow-up question with that would be that when you look at tithe, I believe the principle of tithe was, well, the initial reason for tithe was for the people to give so that they could take care of the Levites, which were the priests at that time. So we have carried that tradition until now. Tithe is now known to be what is taking care of the pastors and everything. But when you actually look at how that is happening in a practical sense, it's becoming popular opinion now that tithing money is not being used in the right way. And this is something that is voiced not only here, everywhere where I've been, even from people who work within the church will tell you that we could do a whole lot more with the money that we are getting from tithe. And then you put that in contrast to the fact that your family is struggling and suffering. How are you going to say that I'm not going to negotiate with God? I guess my question is, based on the principle that how can you say you love a God that you don't see when you're failing to express that to your own family that you see, or a family that is struggling?
Okay, this is tough. I get that. I really do. And the thing is, I've heard these things, and you see it, especially where I'm from. Most of these smaller churches, like if you're not from like these big churches or whatever, then you congregate at a school or whatever. So I get it. But I don't know. Maybe I could get solutions from the floor, but I'm not sure about that still. I don't know if it's okay. Obviously, it is my business what happens to tithe, but yeah, not fully. I don't know. Help, but yeah, no. I'm not one to no.
Okay, Mike, would you like to?
I feel like I'm sitting on the wrong side to answer this particular question. Sorry, Kay does. But I think. I don't know who else has experienced this, but you return tithe this month, and then you give to your family, and you are still able to at least make it to week 3 before that Mampara week before payday. Then this 1 month, let's say you decide, okay, you know what, things are tight, I can't give tithe, and then it's Mampara week the whole month. Like, am I the only one experiencing that? Like, and then it's almost like, how about Jesus? Like, remember me from last month, man. So I feel like in order for and again, I'm sitting on the wrong side, but I do black tax because I don't not necessarily that I don't believe in it. I don't believe in it. But I do black tax because, you think of your family, And then with regards to tithing and black tax, I think for me personally, if I tithe, I'm able to black tax, because if I don't tithe, then I can't even black tax because the money just goes sideways. Like,
You
and you
never
have
know where it
no
went.
idea what happened. You're like, I didn't buy hair, I didn't do nails. Like, what happened to my money? So I just feel when it comes to tithing and black tax, it just, for me, they go hand in hand. And then
So you believe there's an extra spiritual hand when you
somehow,
meet your spiritual obligations too?
within the bank balances of our lives, it just happens. It's so natural. Like, it's weird. Like, you say, okay, abona this month, okay, maseng keep it healthy, then it's ones are local, and this and this and this, and then the minute you get to your net balance after everything else, and then you're like, okay, if I remove tithe, I'll be able to do this. You remove tithe, you can't do anything. So yeah, that's me.
Okay, thank you. Let's hear from Brother Tommy.
By the way, you can be broke and still return tithe. You return and your money just flies. There's not a guarantee that if you return, blessings will fill your pockets until. But anyway, I can't say anything against tithe at the risk of becoming a devil himself. and I'm sitting next to a pastor here. But reality is Isaiah 58 from this. I've gone through that passage, and it somewhat hits me in this context where the Pharisees had converted the whole offering system into their own enrichment system, as opposed to the real oppressed people who needed funds. And the impression that is created by the chapter is that I cannot drive to church with an envelope full of money passing a blind woman on the robot or something like that and call that giving to God. It then changes everything about how you think about it. That, yes, of course, the principle is the Levites don't work. They only work for the church. But their wives today, they are doctors and lawyers. Now we are not sure about the Levites anymore, but in actual the principle remains. But I think to balance it out, I'll take the position that, you can't. I think my understanding of God, He also would never allow me to pass a desperate situation with an envelope full of tithe just because it has to go to the Levite.
I hear a lot of murmuring on that. Let's
Can I
take the mic right in front.
Ask one question to Tammy. Tithe is only 10% of the money that you receive. There's still a whole other 90%. So now you're acting like you can only give from that 10%. And I feel like if you can't give from that 90%, then you're already living outside of your means. You need to be maybe a bit more responsible with the money that you're spending, because it's just 10%. Yeah, but yeah.
I think I'm on the same line. Posen was mentioning something, and it's something we always talk about. Same question in terms of the 90. What do we do with the 90? I think it's because of maybe the lifestyles that we are living that makes it a bit difficult to have the extra money. I'm also of the opinion that, it's common amongst us, the so-called previously disadvantaged, not to have extra cash. But again, I think maybe one of the other things that make us incapable of helping the less privileged, starting with our families, is because of the lifestyles that we are living in Johannesburg. Because what is the first thing that you think about when you get an offer, Specifically, if you're coming from KZN to Johannesburg, it's like 2 times more, right? And the first thing you think about is you want to stay in Midrand, you want to drive a GTI Golf 7, And are those things necessary? So it's always a case that God must understand whenever we have to make sacrifices. And we say the basic minimum basic minimum for me is a 2-bedroom apartment, right, in Midrand. I use the Gautrain, you know, I work in Pretoria, you know, those kinds of things. Do I have to, you know? You know, I don't know, the life, because one of the questions is really, I don't know if I should mention this one. You know, there's another group of different believers, you know, that I'm a part of. And one of the questions we're asking ourselves is, with so much poverty around us and so much need, you know, when I get a bonus, should I really take my family and travel with them, you know? Or should I maybe use that money to help the less privileged? You know, with the thought that as a Christian, I believe that I'm going to go to heaven one day, you know, and I'll be able to really have true enjoyment of life and all those kinds of things. It may sound like a ridiculous statement to make, but I think what I'm trying to say is, sometimes whenever we need to serve God, we want to serve God at our convenience, and yet we are called to sacrifice. Could it be then that, you know, with the 90%, we can be more prudent in terms of how we utilize it? Because I think we are, again, point of departure. If we are saying we are Christians, you know, we should not necessarily living for self, but living for others. And maybe on the point of the church, you know, again, you know, I know we have different people, maybe we may not be part of our denomination, but regardless of the church or denomination that you belong to, I think we are called as Christians to also be stewards. I think it is being irresponsible, you know, if we would continue feeding a system that, number one, is not being accountable. And number two, in principle, the structure, you know, was put in place so that the less privileged can be assisted. But if the practice contradicts what the structure should be, I think it is our job and our responsibility for us to stop feeding that system until things are done the right way.
Okay. So, yeah, what I'm getting from that comment is, yes, tithing has been institutionalized. And as with any institutions have a life cycle. And the way where we find ourselves right now, the institution is malfunctioning in terms of meeting its prerogative of distribution of the money in the storehouse. And the sentiment here is that if that system or if that institution is malfunctioning, we should have the duty to make sure that we right that wrong by taking care of our families and fixing the immediate problems that we have. That's the sentiment that's just been voiced out. I don't know if you have any other questions. I did see a hand at the back there. I'm not sure if it's still there. Okay, so it's okay. Is there any other hand before we continue to our last segment of the debate? I don't know if there's any questions from the stream. Oh, okay.
No, not mid-trend.
Yeah. Okay, let's take one at the back.
There's a question from Kululeko. It says, who should take care of the parents? I can't see how giving one's parents money perpetuates poverty. Also, have you considered being on the receiving end of the so-called tax? To be a recipient of the financial help that can change your life, if you're trying to improve your life by studying, for example, and the older sibling complain about black tax. So I guess the main question is, have you considered yourself on the receiving end? To Tammy.
Well, I've been a candidate of expectations but never fulfilled. So, which is why the kind of resilience and drive that I got from that is what makes me contribute to this conversation. That, you know, speaking of parents, government has a lot of checks and balances. There's pension, but what I was driving at as a point is that it does not necessarily have to be finances. That's all I was saying. You know, ayikho le 90% Sanele. Ayikho. You go to Midrand, there's no furniture.
Okay, I think we'll just jump on that on that last question and go to the last segment. Is black tax sustainable? Like, in the long run, 10, 15 years from now, when you look, ahead of this time, will you be able to look back and say, I'm glad I did that? Or will you look back and say, I wish I just pursued my dreams and forgot about what was happening? Is black tax sustainable, or does it create a very unhealthy dependency on the working black professional?
I think I'm going to echo what Budwam said over there, that we don't necessarily have to give hard cash to people that we help in our family and all of that. But I think when you look back at looking back at you helping your cousin or your niece or whatever with his school fees, or I don't know, investing in some way, investing in that person's future, then I think when you look back, you would be proud of yourself, because the situation definitely would have improved already. And I think also, I just see it in what I've been doing also, is that the people that I give money to at home have sometimes they'll call me in the morning, and please call, hey, ungayilibali, what time are you gonna? And I'm like, so it does create the way, but so ngezel, there's that thing. But I think maybe there is a way to improve it or do it better, and invest long term. And if they need food now, you don't have to send them money. This is what I have discovered, that I don't have to send them money. I can send them a voucher to go to Pick and Pay or whatever, and they can buy food, and I can do something else. Because sometimes you send money and they do other things. Curtains, and as good necessary as right now, I sent you money for food, and 2 weeks from now you're going to tell me, pelile, So it does create that unhealthy thing, but I think there are ways to control it, and we can invest better into our families' lives.
Yes. How would you like to respond?
Well, I think we really underestimate we really underestimate what poverty can do to a single human being found in a corner to survive. I just think we are just worrying too much about these people. That's what I'm reading from all of this. One of the net effects of this is that they end up telling you how to spend your own money over and above the one you give to them, because you'll be like, next month I can't do this because I want to buy myself shoes, and they'll tell you, but no, you can buy the oven here at home and you'll buy shoes later. And we are just creating unnecessary enemies. Now our brothers cannot call us because there's an expectation that I should have sent money. Maybe I was just greeting. If there was no transactions involved, we'll be peacefully living with our people. And like I said, if they need advice or anything or prayer, they are welcome.
Okay, we'll take the last few hands. I see 3, and then we'll have the closing statements. We'll start. Let me start with those who haven't spoken. I'll start with Owen. Is there a mic available?
My view on black tax, let's look at it. Let's say I'm supporting my parents. Let's admit it, if your mom was a domestic worker all her life, there's no pension fund. Mlung will give her max 20,000 maybe, if that person is too kind, when they go on retirement. And for the rest of their life, they have to depend on 1,600 or whatever 20 rands which are added annually on that 1,600, of which is practically not sustainable. And I don't think I would live with myself having a nice meal and having my mom live on 1.6. That after hustling all my life with her and ensuring that I get educated and everything. So from that perspective, I'll think if we define black tax in the true sense of what tax is, because remember in life there are few things which are guaranteed. Death is one of them. If Christ doesn't come before that, and tax is one other thing. So if it's tax, just like they deduct your PYE before you get your actual money, I might as well consider putting it as tax in that sense. But it's a better tax because I'm the one who regulates what percentage it will be based on what I afford.
Right, thank you for that. Let's take the next mic. There's a hand at the back.
Thank you. I'm not sure whether this is a question or what, but why is this concept called black tax? I do not know who brought this concept. It has a lot of whiteness in it, and by virtue of that fact, there's colonialism involved, and therefore I want to submit that a white person brought this concept to black people. I also want to submit that all black people are a product of a black tax, so-called black tax. If you think that you are not a product of black tax, it means somewhere, somehow, you crossed a flaw. You're not sure whether you're black or white. So all of us. It seems to me that somebody gave it to us black people because we needed assistance at that time. There were no opportunities. That's why we are categorized as coming from a disadvantaged background. So by that very fact, someone out there gave it to you as a black person. And therefore, perhaps we should not even use this concept of a black tax. We should refer to it as charity, whatever. Because we can't say black tax begins at home. You say charity begins at home. Yeah. And when you are actually helping a black person, you can't agonize, digging deep into your pocket and helping a black person. It doesn't matter whether it's coming from your immediate family or otherwise. We should help one another as black people. Thank you.
Okay. Right, so we will, I saw the red, in red. I think that's the first time I saw.
Okay, so I think the previous speaker just really spoke much about what I wanted to say, but another point I want to really highlight when it comes to black tax is the fact that it comes with a bit of a dictatorship complex, if not dictatorship, and expectations complex, whereby if you are the breadwinner or the person that's helping in the family with black tax, you almost dictate as to what this money is going to do. Nothing about it is selfless. If I send money, it is for this, and if you don't buy this, you upset, you reckless. It's also seen as an investment. You put into something, into someone's education, and you expect results. You're like, okay, why aren't you studying now? Because I'm paying for your education, and nothing about it is selfless per se. And I think then, for me, it comes from the fact that maybe we are calling it a tax, we are calling it a burden, and not seeing it as something that should be freely and openly given with an open heart. It has a really tight-heartedness to it.
Yes. Okay, we'll move to the next hand. Yes, I believe, yes.
Okay, I wanted to say that whether we like it or not, to whom much is given, much is expected. But also I want to agree that I think throwing money at people is a form of laziness. I think we are in a very privileged age where there's so much, digital technology, innovation and all of that. Why are we not thinking outside of the box? Why are we looking at our families and just focusing on them? Who's next to come up with a platform business here? Are we just going to be accepting the Ubers and the Facebooks? When are we coming up with something to sort out black tax once? You know, can we just think outside of the box?
Okay, is there a hand at the back? Ooh, Mike.
Sorry, maybe whether I will be answering or maybe, but it's just a comment. Because as a Christian, the Bible actually alludes to the fact that there will always be poor people amongst us. So who will be taking care of those poor people who live amongst us? And as Christ was walking on this journey, he was selfless. And as a result of what he said, colonialism put us in a situation whereby we are in a corner, whereby my parents would actually don't have anything to take me to school, and they sacrificed to put me in a boarding school where the fees were very high. And at times they will not be able to give you pocket money just because they didn't have, for you to have a future, not because they want you to take care of them, but because you see what they went through. You then you are obliged to take care of them. Because right now, maybe the black tax, I'll use it for now loosely, will be, gradually it will go away. Why? Because now I'm also taking care of my kids. I have to make sure they're educated. When they're educated, and maybe if I've got my own job and whatever, I don't expect much from them. So as the generation goes, and as we old people maybe change our perspective and also have better things to do, then the black tax in the long run might diminish because of what our kids and our grandchildren are going to be having, because they now have the opportunity to take care of themselves and not take care of us, because we can take care of ourselves.
Okay, I'll take my brother there, my sister here, and last one right here in front. Right over there, yes.
I think the reality is that for everything that we do, we're always going to be paying. Whether you are supporting your family through a business idea or you are taking somebody to school, the reality is that you're always going to pay. You're not going to avoid spending money. Yeah, I think that's it.
So in listening to all the comments that have been said, one of the first things that I think we need to do is, coming back from comment ya Baba Bangali, let's define what black tax is, because I think that's where we got it wrong. Black tax, ayikho esintwini. What we do have is Ubuntu. What is Ubuntu? Where does the concept of Ubuntu come from? Umuntu ngumuntu ngabantu. And as Umama was saying at the back there, you had a situation where children needed to go to school, children needed to eat, people got sick and all of that. Who would help in those situations? The people around you. And that's where it comes from. And now that we've moved into what we call the modern world, we've redefined it. We've colonized it into black tax. It's not black tax. Ukuphilisana, ubuntu. Do we get that? I think that's where we need to get it from. Uguti, what exactly is this black tax? Because at the end of the day, and somebody said that should I say the firstborns or the eldest children are the ones who are complaining? No, it's not us. It's the ones who come after us. Because usually firstborns are the ones who bear the brunt. Like Umama was saying, you need to go to school, there's no fees. So people gazette, that's what we call it, we gazette, put money together to say, okay, let this child go to school. If you went to boarding school, you would need food in your trunk. The argument was always, you don't need food in your trunk, the dining hall has food. right? So as long as a community, whether we're a community of relatives, whether you're a community of people around, we can put money together to send this child to school, right? That's where this whole concept came from, of understanding the sacrifices that were made. And by understanding them, you're not carrying them as a burden. You're understanding them. And therefore saying, with an understanding that there was a sacrifice from other people, I want, or I would desire to give the sacrifice back. Whether it's by saying, listen, I'm ready now. I'm able to say, ugogo was the responsibility of ubanibani. I would like to take over that responsibility. Do you understand? Or I would like to take over the responsibility of sorting out whatever issues need to be sorted out within the house, whether it's renovations and all of that. But I think our starting point should be, let's define where the issue of this black tax. I also hate those two words, because it's not a tax. It's understanding what we are by nature, Africans are people of community. We are not individualists. We don't live with what I have is mine. By nature, that is not who we are. If you look at our history, if you look at where we come from, how we do things, anything that involves Africans involves pulling people together. And unfortunately, again, this is where we are. There is money involved. It means pulling people together.
Okay. I want to be very faithful to time as much as I can. Please, for the next people, try to keep it as short as the spirit lead. I know some people are working tomorrow, so yeah. But let's take one, and then I'll want to give an opportunity to the pastor as well. So yeah, at the back.
This perhaps is more for point of clarification. As you can see, I'm here. There's no demarcation whether I'm on this side or on that side. But the point here, I believe we may argue about the coining of the term. We may argue about the terminology. But what we're actually dealing with there, I believe, is not the terminology. What we're dealing with is the concept that has been coined via this terminology. In other words, when we want to argue as to what black tax, or how we understand black tax or whatever, black tax is this, black tax is that, I think what the concept is here is that when we're talking about black tax, we are speaking about a family affair where for you, because now you have graduated or you are now employed, you have to give back to specifically at home. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about Ubuntu here. Ubuntu is not a family affair. It's not something that's just dealing with your family. Ubuntu actually speaks to the outer community outside of your family. That is where Ubuntu comes in. And here, do not think we are talking about Ubuntu. We are talking about black tax, something that has to do with home. Where and I liked what Utami said earlier on, in that where we want to, and the comment somewhere there which spoke about stopping this thing. How do we get to a point where we do not have to have black tax, where we can simply have Ubuntu, in other words? So the idea is that we have white counterparts, coloreds and whatever, all the other nations and ethnicities that are out there, which do not have a black tax, mainly because of where they are in life, where they start off. So once they are employed, it's for them. It's for them to move forward. It's for them to look forward to their next generation and so forth and so on. And I believe the whole concept that we are trying to deal with is actually for us as the black nation to finally get to that stage where we are not prohibited by where we are coming from, where as soon as you get 100,000, 40,000 has to go back. And therefore, your investments are already limited in terms of you moving forward.
Okay, great, Pastor.
I would be worried if the idea of giving is so that I give back. Then it creates other moral issues. There are parents who've given birth to children because they want to have somebody who's going to bury them, somebody who is going to do things for them. So the whole idea of bearing children then takes a different moral direction, because you are doing this so that. So it's an investment for you. It's a cash scheme for you. Any gift that comes out of pain, out of obligation, is no longer a gift. So it's important that we understand this to be a gift, not to be an obligation. Because once we see it as an obligation, you've seen people who return tithe grudgingly, how they become. And it becomes so even for those that are. So it must be out of thankfulness and out of, not because you have to do this. Last thing I want to, maybe if we were to, but we are not doing that tonight, if we were to go into the solutionist mode, I think it is hard to be a black person, whether in religion or socially, because there's always this sense of burden. Be that as it may, I think one way or some ways we could treat this or handle this is increase the black entrepreneurial capacity so that we are able to take care of all these things we think we've got to do come what may, whether from a religious perspective or from a social perspective. So we've got to be able to think of, in the context of South Africa, I don't know in other countries, but more so in South Africa, we've got to find ways we could, as black people, young people, increase our capacity to provide for these things. I'll give you examples. DTI, for example, Department of Trade and Industry, just because I am a pastor, you may think I'm talking about something else when I say DTI, is looking for, through a scheme called Black Industrialist Scheme, is looking for high-impact entrepreneurs. And what is interesting is South African black people are not taking it up. Agriculture, agro-processing, and all of those are high-impact industries. But none of us are taking them up. We are happy to be black professionals, Lendos. We are just happy to be black professionals. And South Africans, non-South Africans come into South Africa. I've got scores of friends who come into South Africa, take advantage of what would have been for the local citizens, because the local citizens think of nothing else but to be employed. That's a discussion for another day. But my point is simply this. If we are going to have all these things on a black person's head, then we must think beyond professional jobs. We must think entrepreneurially. We must think of ways we could increase our capacity to absorb all these things that we have placed on ourselves.
Thank you, Pastor. I'm being informed that the conversation online on Facebook is very heated. I can't really see the comments. I think we might have to finish it there because we will spend the whole night here. I'm sorry to those I couldn't give an opportunity to speak. If you do have something burning that you would like to share, I'm willing to give one or two persons to give. It has to be extremely... Okay, let's...
Type us on
it. So I work with small businesses, as maybe most of you know. Now that we know, again, to Mfuni's point, we're not arguing the term, but I think whoever coined the term was trying to emphasize the fact that as black people, we cannot run away from it, essentially, right? Now, okay, that's fine. We can take it up on Facebook. But what I want to say is this. Now that we understand as black people that this is a challenge we are facing, right? We are saying that we can, right? It's fine. Other races thrive on supporting each other. This is what I want to say, right? And there are people here who have small businesses, or maybe others have big businesses, but we don't know what they do. And we go and support other people. So my encouragement is that let us support our own. Because we now know that if I support my sister here, she has 11 people depending on her. You know, I think that's what the stats say. Like an average professional supports an average of 11 people. So that's why it's even difficult when people are retrenched. You know that 11 other people are going to suffer because of that. So let's understand what are the alternative sources of income we can pursue. And once people have started their own businesses, let's support each other. Amen.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for your contributions, for your questions. We will have more time on Sabbath to actually consolidate everything that we will be discussing this week, starting from yesterday about loneliness, today. Tomorrow will be very exciting as well, so please make sure you don't miss that. Yes, do I have something from?
Can I just challenge those who believe in the Bible to go and read, so that when you come on Sabbath you have some other discussion that will expand this, to go and read Mark chapter 7, verses 9 to 13. It's an interesting contrast between the parental obligation and the religious obligation. If you could read that at some stage. I can send it on Facebook in the course of the day, so that you wrestle with it and see how do you find your way out of that one.
Yes.
It's Mark chapter 7, 9 to 13.
Yes. Okay. I'll just give this time very briefly to our two participants. Firstly, let's have the closing statements, your concluding remarks after everything. What is your final take? Just 2 lines, 3.
After everything that has been said, I still think we need to help each other. And where you can help. It doesn't matter how you help. And just find a way to help if you can.
My closing point will be, you'll never be able to invest money in your own dreams if you keep sending it home.
Okay, with that, I'd like to thank our two guests. Can you just give them a round of applause, please? Yes. Thank you so much for being part of the discussion. Thank you all for being here today in the cold, late at night. I know we have commitments tomorrow. Please be here again tomorrow. For those joining us online, thank you for tuning in. Please be there again tomorrow. Topics will be... we appreciate your inputs, even online. We are taking notes of them, and we'll engage you later on after our own gathering here. Just to close things off,